welcome along.
Hey!
Hi! Nice to have you. It's good to be here. Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming. So today we have Veronica King with us from the Yoga Nidra project. And Veronica is a long-term friend, an ex-studio owner, and a really well-recognised yoga teacher around New Zealand. I think you've spoken at a couple of Yoga New Zealand conferences and all.
I see you're online coming up soon too.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, we've got some
Cool.
more public speaking spots. Yeah. Wow, I'm trying to, we met many years ago through the Anusara practice. Both of us shared the same teacher, Katie Lane, and did some immersions together.
We did, yeah.
A couple of, feels so long ago.
I know, I was trying to remember what year it was, and I was like, was it 2007, 8? Yeah.
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 Wow.
Yes. Exactly.
Going back.
Yeah.
Going
So
back.
that's nearly 15 years.
15 years.
Good
Yeah.
math.
Of course we were 10. Very advanced.
I might have been 15.
So we did kind of a whole lot of diving deep into the Anusara, and you ended up doing 500 Noah Maze's 300 hours, etc. So, and then you've moved off in your own direction now again, which is really fantastic. So, what got you into yoga? Why?
Great question.
Yeah. I know, I was like, this is a long question.
We've got heaps of time.
Oh, okay. Well, firstly, thank you so much to be here and share this time with you both and to talk about our favourite subject, yoga. And so I feel like I started yoga through calisthenics, which is an Australian sport. And it's like yoga on speed, and people laugh when I describe it. And I did this competitively throughout my whole childhood, up until my last year of high school.
Awesome.
And you would do handstands, and you would do Hanuman, and you would do back bends into reverse handstands. And
Wow.
you were basically doing very fast yoga to music as part of a competitive squad. So my body...
Sort of like the Olympic gymnastics.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
yeah. So
Okay.
my body was doing asana before I did yoga.
Wow.
Oh, okay, wow.
So then I needed to slow down. And at university, I went to a couple of different yoga teachers, and one of them I remember distinctly because it was the Shavasana that was everything. Because the asana, the movement, was familiar, but the feeling of peace and that restful experience at the end of class was quite profound. And it was back in the day when you'd wear your tracksuit pants and you're in a dusty church hall. And I went with my friend and her mum, and it was a really beautiful experience. And then I also at the same time just started very casual classes at uni, and I noticed that the days that I did that yoga in my lunch break, I felt better than the days that I didn't do yoga. But I was a dabbler, and so it wasn't that first full-on intense love affair that people have. I was just like, I like this. And then I stumbled across Ayurveda, which was the great love of mine. And I had a beautiful Sufi lecturer, Professor Junius, and he just brought yoga philosophy to life, Ayurvedic philosophy. It was just this perspective of well-being and health that was so holistic and so different to the Western model. And I fell in love, and yoga was part of Ayurveda.
Yeah.
And then it's a long story. Me and yoga, it's like this long marriage.
That's a great
This
path,
long
though.
love affair. And then I started traveling, and I kind of straddled yoga, and I discovered Vipassana meditation. And I held the two. They were both very powerful, very different practices. And on my third Vipassana retreat, I pretty much almost got kicked out. They were over the years. And on the third one, they said, you have to choose. You can't do yoga and Reiki and Vipassana. And so I sat that final one, and I was like, okay, well, it's the yoga path for me, because I still needed something very physical because my body needed that.
Yeah.
And so that's where the love affair really began, and I began to dive deeper into yoga as a whole practice. And kind of reflecting over the years when you own a yoga studio, it's like, what are we doing here? What is yoga? Like, how's this different to Pilates? How's this different to exercise and breathing? And it was two key things. It was the philosophy and understanding of the world that it can give you.
Yeah.
And it was a community. That's the je ne sais quoi, when you come together and you create it as a collective, which if you've practiced on your own is a wonderful thing, but practicing together, there's a chemistry and alchemy that happens. And really meeting Katie and the community that became Grassroots, and all of us together have been a part of that, and that's what it really was for me. It was the teachings of the philosophy and the community. So that's my yoga story.
And so a move on from having the studio, but still developing the community. What sort of things are you doing these days?
So these days it looks like catching up with dear yoga friends and other teachers.
Nice.
I'm working for the Yoga Lunchbox, which is an online blogging website and community page, essentially, and just looking at sort of reframing that and really showcasing yoga in New Zealand, which is really exciting, and all the facets of yoga, because we know already that yoga is so much more than just one thing, and it means something different to everyone who engages with it in a different way, whether we're bedridden and we're meditating, or we're up and doing handstands and Hanumans and everything in between.
That's right.
So, and then my great love affair of yoga is Yoga Nidra, which is the guided meditation practice. And so really I've just been building an online connection for Yoga Nidra, because I taught it in person, which I will get back to post-COVID world. We will all get back to. But everyone kept asking to have it recorded and to be able to do it at home in bed.
Yeah, it's a great practice.
Yeah. And that's where it's often, like, I call it the gateway, and it's most transformative. It helps us with our sleep. Yeah. But what we're really doing is a profound meditation practice. So once we can stay awake, we're doing something else.
Resolve to stay awake.
Yeah. you know the line.
Yeah, that's right, because it is so tempting to just... It's only a tiny little sliver of a little bit from Yoga Nidra to deep sleep, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a powerful line we walk, and really grateful to one of my teachers, Mark Colesman, who was like, when you go to training, you're going to fall asleep. Like, don't stress. Everyone's so tired. We arrive so wired from our lives that it would be unfair to go, okay, it's Nidra time, everyone stay present and meditate now. It's like, if we need a month of sleep recovery and we get that through Yoga Nidra, what a gift.
Absolutely. And it's quite interesting, isn't it, that whole, our lives make us exhausted, and then we need sleep recovery through this practice of Yoga Nidra. Well, obviously we want to move beyond that, but it's just insane the lives that we live. So, like, why teaching? Because obviously you practiced it and you dabbled, and I think that that's quite a normal start too. Obviously there are some people who are like, oh, I'm in love and that's it, but most of us dabble and slowly get entwined. So then what made you leap from being the practitioner to the teacher?
Yeah, it just became, it's going to sound a bit woo-woo, it became a calling, like this feeling of...
I think we can do woo-woo.
This has helped me so much through so many different aspects of my life, and it's a call to share. And for myself personally, I felt like I didn't fit the mould physically of what a yoga teacher looked like.
High five.
Hey. So all the women out there who don't fit the mould, and I was like, I know, but there is a certain imprint, and particularly at that time in 2009-10, like there was that crescendo of Instagram explosion, like big poses in tight lycra and like slim bodies, no breasts to like do yoga with, and I was like, how do we do this and what can I offer, how can I be involved in this, and that's actually what I thought I had to offer. I was like going to be the teacher for the people who wanted the teacher that was
looked a bit like them.
Yeah, looked a bit like them, was a bit different, and that's where I found my way in the world.
Yeah, but you must have still had quite a deep-seated desire to do that. It wasn't just, that's for sure, but you've got to have a bit more internally to make that happen.
Yes, yeah, and I guess sort of thinking more profoundly.
No,
That was a part of it. No, but
Yeah.
what happened was with the earthquakes, it was kind of like, what life am I going to live?
Yeah.
What am I doing with my life? What's my passion? How do I live my best life? And for years that had felt like this truncated process. Like I tried to go to Ayurveda and then I went a different path, and there were all these steps along the way that I realized were taking me to yoga. But it started as psychology studies at uni, and then it looked like Ayurveda, and then it was Reiki, and so there was this triangulation to the point of, what does this look like if the world's going to crumble around me? What is going to give my life meaning? And it was yoga. And so, and I guess in some ways that was the accessible choice too, right? Because yoga trainings are actually quite accessible. You can decide you want to do it, and if you're committed to the process, you can do it. And it's wonderful.
I know. And that's kind of the accessibility of yoga all round, isn't it? If you are committed to the process and you want to practice yoga, every single one of us, whether we are able-bodied or not able-bodied, or short, tall, 70 or 15 or whatever, can do it.
Or 10.
As
because you were 15.
Took me a few more years than 15.
I'm joking.
I can relate. Yeah.
Probably another 20 years. But anyway, yeah.
So it's interesting because you say it became a calling, right? And it became a calling to share the benefit of the impact that the yoga practice had brought to you. And yes, it funneled you down a certain path to get to the point of becoming the teacher. So what was, like, if you could describe the impact, like, what was the impact?
Yoga over my life over the years has met different needs, right? So my first love of yoga was feeling strength and control in my body. It was a discipline, right? It was a discipline to show up. We used to do 2-hour practices and they were hard, and you'd sort of be driving there going, am I going? Aren't I going? I could go home. I could be sitting on my sofa, or I'm going to yoga. And I always felt better when I went. I never regretted going to yoga. And then as I guess my body changed, that actually wasn't the right practice for me anymore, and it culminated with an injury at a time of grief, and it manifested in a labral hip tear, which was quite transformative in how I had to approach the practice. And I called this love of yoga a marriage, because there were times where I was angry at yoga. It had hurt me, and I had to really strip it back and go, wait, I still love it. What do I love? What does that look like? And it looked like gentle, nurturing practice. It looked like compassion, which looked very different to the practices I was doing before that. And then with the earthquakes came trauma, and with that came Yoga Nidra as a form of recovery. I was like, how can this practice really support our recovery through the hard times? Not interested so much now in mastering and commanding my body. That was great for my 20s and early 30s. Now it's like, now we're in a different place, and I need to practice something loving. And that was yoga. And then even more kind of owning it and getting honest about what I really love to practice. And it was Yoga Nidra was illuminated for me. So,
and you see that sort of sustaining your practice in the coming years as well, that's really the continued direction for you. That's
my heart now. But who knows, right? Because if you'd asked me...
That's right. Yeah, if we'd asked you 15 years ago.
Yeah, it would have been like teacher trainings around the world, peak poses, let's do this, people. And it was, and that was brilliant, and I loved it. It was like a high. But this is very different. This is like, how do we find peace? How do we live in this world? How do we feel nourished, replenished, so we can have joyful lives and fulfilling lives?
Yeah. And I think that's kind of like the nuts and bolts, really, when you pull everything back. Like, that's the practice of yoga, is how do you find peace, how do you find joy, how do you find compassion, and how do you find fulfillment?
And not really any place except in here. How are you finding all those things in here? You know, because then then you're prepared for the world.
Yeah.
But it has to be here first, doesn't it?
Yeah, the world can crumble around you.
Your body may even crumble around you, but the yoga will transcend that, and it does. And that's not always easy. We were just talking about, when we don't do the practices that serve us best because we feel too raw, too vulnerable, but we can just strip them back to the very basics. What does that look like? A moment of stillness.
A breath in
A
and
breath.
out.
A breath in and a breath out.
And you've done some yoga.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you have.
So if people were really interested in what you're doing at the moment, where might they find you?
Oh, well, thank you for asking. So I've moved my yoga universe to the yoganidraproject.com.
Okay.
There's a 7-day free trial, so if you've never done Yoga Nidra, or I've always been a believer, it's like, find your practice, find your teacher, find the voice that is appropriate, find the languaging that's right for you right now. So I teach the integrative Amrit method of Yoga Nidra, which has very spiritual languaging, which really appealed to me. But for some people that could be triggering or not right. So just like anything in life, like find the teacher and the style. So, so you can try this on the 7-day free trial. And on Instagram at the Yoga Nidra Project and Facebook. All the good places.
All those social media channels.
And I will be doing the Exercise New Zealand online roadshow, which is what you were referring to. And this year the focus is on mental health. Yeah. So they've got some, pretty much every session is around that topic, regaining control. And directed for exercise professionals, people who are self-employed, running businesses, and how do we look after ourselves? How do we practice that self-care? Because often it goes out here and not in here. So I'll be doing a lovely 2-hour session, some theory and practice. So hope you can join us.
So you're not doing any live classes at the moment?
Oh, I will be, but not quite yet. So do follow, please. And on the books for the horizon is a nourishing retreat. We did one last year, and it was stunning, and keen to get back to that forum of sharing and that immersive experience as well.
Yeah, as we can open our doors and travel a little and spend time with people that are not part of our family.
Yeah, exactly. I love my family, but it is. And I think that's the thing, is that the power of the practice. So I was actually talking about this with some students after class just this week, whereby it's powerful practicing at home, it's powerful practicing by yourself, because there's always benefit and it's cumulative. But they were saying it's always much more powerful in the group setting and in the group energy. So that we do encourage you, when there are workshops available and they're in your town, go.
Find that group, find that energy of the collective, isn't it?
The
community. And then that brings us, like if we think about the ripples, it's the community, and then something much more even expansive and global and beautiful.
Now, we think that yoga is essential for lasting and sustained positive transformation. What are your thoughts?
Did I mention the long marriage? I think yoga is a practice that that we are connected to, that spiritually nourishes us, that connects us to something bigger than the daily grind and the hustle and whatever form of expression that takes. And for us it's been yoga, but if you were to ask each of us what yoga is today, 10 years ago, 15 years ago when we met, the answer is always different. So it's the practice, it's the connecting to your spiritual life, I think, that ultimately will keep you coming back and again and again and again.
It's interesting. Spiritual life has been a big conversation for us today.
It has been. Yeah.
And I think that unwittingly, probably when I first stepped on the yoga mat, I didn't know that that's what I was inviting into my life. But the philosophy and the insight that it brings in terms of how we live our life, and then how we can really live our life to the fullest, and then that connection to something much higher than ourselves, which is actually just ourselves. It's all that yoga is for me now. So maybe talk a little bit about like that philosophical, spiritual, like, because you've said it a few times. Like, what does that kind of translate?
That's
that's a big question.
It is a big question, but I think it's a big and an easy one. So it's big, it's hard, it's easy. I don't know. It's that concept of the energetic experience of life. You know, we come in as energy, we live as embodied physical beings, but we're also energetic beings, and then we sort of get very stuck in that, and then we're looking to kind of expand beyond that. And the planet is energy, or our furniture is energy, like the plants are energy. And so if we kind of come to that, then we can step out of labeling, is it source, is it God, is it, you know, this, that, or the other. It's, if we look at what is spirituality, what does faith look like, it transcends all of those descriptions and lineages. And so in the end, it actually doesn't matter what path we choose. We are all climbing towards that same place, that same goal, that which is an expression of ourselves unbridled by conditioning and just I'm just getting tingly thinking about it, you know, as aliveness, as what we really are here. And that's why our bodies can change, our circumstances can change, our cities, our countries, and, you know, we go through a lot. That's not to discredit anything that we go through, that's our humanity, but there is also something more, and that's, I think, the essence of yoga. It's coming back to that something more.
Absolutely. And you're right, like there's the energetic body that we connect to and after connecting to our physical body, and then there's this luminosity. Like for me, it even translates into that luminosity. And like I look at the radiance of you two beautiful women, like, you know, there's a light that you carry out into the world that people notice.
And everybody has it.
Yes.
And everybody has it. Don't have to feel that you're missing out. It's finding it. And the three of us anyway, and you might too, find that it's actually been through a yogic practice of some shape, way or form that it's actually allowed us to find that. Because, you know, we've talked before about how we end up in our heads all the time. The world happens through our thoughts and our thinking, but actually once we activate our bodies, and that was my path, was it was the first time I actually used my body, because I definitely didn't do any calisthenics when I was a little child. I was a brownie, not a ballet dancer.
You probably have a lot more practical skills than me.
So you say you find that light, but actually there's nothing to find. You just have to be it. You have to be it, really. Just know that it's there no matter what, really.
And you've both talked about being around people that help you raise that you can feel it. And we can start really small. And I always found Follow Your Bliss a little bit confronting, because there were times when I just did not feel blissful at all, you know, for prolonged periods. But it's just like, it's those little pockets of light. It's the people. It's the walk on the beach. It's the things that just kind of make you feel a little bit better, and you keep expanding on that. And it, you know, yoga isn't all unicorns and rainbows. Like, it can get pretty grisly on the mat. And I remember feeling like yogic rage, or just showing up, and
tears.
All of it, like sweat, tears, you know, what is going on here? But we're just following that little kernel of coming back to ourselves, coming back to that luminosity.
Just remember, you know, daggers. Like the dagger, like, I'm going to kill you, teacher.
What? Put my elbow there?
But that's what's happening. As you move your body, you're like moving through the samskara, and like you don't know what's going to be hit in any given moment. But you're so right. I think there's the people that you surround yourself with, and when you find, like, I know that we found a really beautiful community. Katie created a great community, and then you carried that community forward, and you sustained that community, and that group of people have lifted me to levels that I didn't even think were possible. So it is important that you find the community who are going to support you to lift yourself to different levels, and also the teacher. I think, like you said, find the teacher who you resonate with, so that, because they'll see you and they'll bring you to where you need to be. Yeah.
Somewhere you didn't think that you were going, or even that thought was possible. And yeah, that's a really beautiful remembrance of the power of having that regular contact with a teacher, someone who sees you and sees you more clearly than you see yourself, you know, sees things in you that you didn't know were possible, which were not always about holding a pose for longer. Like, yes, that, but also so much more than that. You know, they see that spark and they see what's possible for you. And so do your friends, and so do your partners, and
one day you wake up and you do it, you see it for yourself.
That's it, that's the day. It was there all along.
Yeah.
Who knew? Why didn't I know earlier?
Exactly. But I think, like, you know, the gift of the Yoga Nidra project, you're saying actually you can find rest, you can find relaxation, you can find restore, and then through that you can find this deeper connection to living your highest life.
Absolutely.
And if that's calls to people out there, then, you know, I suggest that Veronica's the teacher for you. And when you connect with a teacher, it's actually then making sure that you stay connected, right? Because sometimes that's where the relationship over time really supports that transition and that transformation.
Maybe one day we should add Yoga Nidra to Yoga to Transform.
Store that away
for another conversation.
So yes, the teachers who have inspired us, Veronica, you definitely have inspired me over the years. Everything that you did, you carried a wonderful community for 5 years, 7 or 5?
5.
5 years. And I know that you've inspired many, many, many people. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. And to these two inspiring women who have been a really huge part of my journey and helped me step into all of that, because I wasn't ready and I didn't think I could.
But guess what?
They smiled at me and said, "Come on, off you go."
You've got
so
this.
thank you, to two other wonderful women. Thank you so much.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Thank you.